by somebody. All right, nice. How many of those articles were by me? Okay, couple. So the folks from YL usually know how to get a hold of me, but there's others as well. But so what I want to talk about today is what you're up against in getting press, why you even want to get press. Is that even something you should? Talk a lot about what you can do as a founder to get covered by somebody like TechCrunch or VentureBeat or Wall Street Journal. Disclaimers, just to get started. Every writer is different, every publication is different. TechCrunch is very different from most publications because we as writers decide what the hell we want to write about. Nobody tells us what to do for the most part. We have editors like me, but it's the title, senior writer, all those things. It's just everybody does what they want to do for the most part. That is very different at the Wall Street Journal. That's very different at The Verge. It's different than other publications. There are no guarantees. You can do everything right and still nobody may cover you. There's humans on both sides, and those humans are busy or have other interests, and just things may not work out the way you want it to. And lastly, there's always exceptions. Here's the problem you're up against if you want press. There's a lot more of you than there are of us. The tech PR press has been decimated over the last few years, especially security, enterprise. It's the same people I talk to at every conference. There's about 10 of us. We're everywhere. We're too busy. And you guys are a small sliver of what's out there, and you all have something to say. So it's hard. I want to illustrate that for a second. This is my inbox from 2 years ago. Do me a favor, don't take a screenshot of this. I went 2 years ago sort of to protect the innocent, but this is September 22nd. All right, that's one page. That's 2 pages. It's 3 pages. 4 pages. So it just keeps going, okay? We can keep doing this for a little while longer. So that's what you're up against. How can you stand out in that kind of noise? What do we as writers look for? There's a couple of things. And obviously, we want to write about what our audience wants to do about. It's pretty straightforward, right? TechCrunch is a very specialized audience. It's different for other publications. Our audience is a lot of investors, other founders, technology enthusiasts, developers. What they want to read about is who else is getting funding. Who is getting money right now? So funding stories do really well. That's when you want to come to us. New products, new technologies. Hey, containers were huge 3-4 years ago, right? So everybody comes with a container story. We want to write about it because everybody's interested in what's happening there. Then the security around containers that I'm sure a lot of you guys focus on. And your major products. We'll talk about all of those in detail. That means with all of that, there's certain milestones where it makes sense to come to the press. For launch, maybe an alpha, beta, GA release, when you get funding, and when you release the product. Really straightforward. There are not a lot of other milestones where it makes sense to reach out. There just aren't. These are the ones that the press writes about. Maybe you've got a new board member. Good for you. But I don't care. If that board member is Larry Page, sure, we want to know about that. If it's Benioff, sure. Again, there's exceptions, but most of the time, hey, we got a new board member who used to be the CISO of, I don't know, Motorola, Cisco. All right, cool. Like, congratulations. Moving on. It's just that's not a story. For a lot of you, since you're in security, there's one other point there, and that's when something else happens that maybe doesn't directly affect your startup, but affects the overall ecosystem. Yeah, maybe there's a breach, and you've got specific insights into that or how that could have happened. At that point, it makes sense to reach out and say, hey, we can give you some more information about this. Maybe you're the first one to disclose a vulnerability, or you found an ongoing attack somewhere. Cloudflare, for example, is really good at that. They reach out all the time, and a lot of the other big security companies do a lot of that. There's no reason a small company can't do the same, because you might be seeing very similar. So that's another inflection point where I would say, sure, reach out. This is a good time. It's not a story about your company, but you get your name out there, and it helps. And a lot of what that's about is building relationships. You have to build relationships with writers at different publications. You cannot just email blindly. Say, hey, I got seed funding, $200,000. That doesn't. You need to. Does everybody know what an embargo is? Yeah, everybody? Okay, so there was a while where TechCrunch didn't do embargoes, supposedly, and that still goes around in the media sphere somewhere. We do embargoes. Everybody does embargoes. And an embargo, an exclusive, they're two different sides of the same coin. With the embargo, you just decide when the information is out. With the exclusive, you can say, okay, I so want to be in the Wall Street Journal. I will offer them the exclusive. I so want to be covered by VentureBeat. I don't know why, but VentureBeat's probably. But I will give them the exclusive. Now, very often when it's kind of on the cusp, where it's a small seed round, but an interesting company, do I really want to write about that? The exclusive is the thing that makes a difference. Like if I have this exclusive, that's great. I'll be the only one who has it. I've got this relationship with the company right from day one. I'll do it. But it also means others will not write about it. And you got to be really, really clear about that. So when do we write about stuff? It's when you've got something new to announce, basically. It has to be something interesting. And there can be a bunch of stuff. There can be, maybe you're a founder who's had 3 startups before, and we know you already. We will probably cover your new startup, even if we think it's kind of weird and odd and is never going to make it. But this is a founder who's got a reputation. We'll write about you. If you're one of the Twitter founders, we'll write about you. If you've got something really new, the first in a category, I don't know, in the early days of machine learning, it's like, oh, we've got a GUI for machine learning. Sure, we'll write about that.
Going back to your former slide, are product news very interesting? I mean, post-seed or A round or anything around funding. I keep hearing from different PR consultants and firms that the media is just not interested in product news, product announcements. So I know TechCrunch is,
Yeah. There's a difference between product news and updates. Mm-hmm. If you're releasing version 1.23 of your product and you now have an integration with Salesforce, no, that's not news. If it's version 2.0, that's news. If you're doing something totally new, that's news. Now that works better for a company that already has a bit of hype behind it. So if you're just starting out and you just add a little thing, that's not news. But if you're Twitter is not a good example. The guy who did Vine just launched Byte. Totally not enterprisey. But if suddenly this product has a lot of hype behind it, and they launch a filter on Byte or something, we'll probably write about it because everybody wants to read about it. In the end, we're there to serve our readers. So every call we make is, would our readers care? Funding rounds, those are obvious. Bread and butter of what TechCrunch does is funding rounds. Seed, Series A, A+, B, whatever. There's seed extension rounds. We'll cover it because our audience is the investors. They care. It's what we do. Those are the people who come to our conferences. They pay for tickets. We want to give them that. And there's a lot of value in knowing what is getting funded for people in the ecosystem, I think, so we'll cover that.
Even if it's in Israel, not in Silicon Valley?
Oh, somebody just told me, aren't you tired of writing about Israeli companies? Because it seems like half the companies you write about are from Israel. So, I don't care where you're from. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I live in the forest. Well, I don't. I used to live in Connecticut in the forest. It's not exactly. I don't care. It's a European company, Israeli company, or from Brazil. It doesn't matter. It's an interesting product, which always comes first. And I'll write about it. But funding rounds, the writing about funding rounds is always just the beginning. Because the funding round is really just an excuse for me to write about the company and what you're doing and to talk to you and figure out what's happening. and maybe talk to the investors to figure out what they're kind of interested in right now, why they invested. So a lot of money helps, but if the product is cool, a $200,000 seed round is also good enough. Right? It's just one of those milestones where we can see there's a news event. I'll deal with this. I'll write about it. All right. You've got to figure out who to pitch at the publication. I said don't pitch two people at the same time. You got to just hone in on that one writer ideally. And the only way to do that is to read what people write about. Figure out what people are interested in. All the time I get these emails that say, we've got this really cool sports product, that fitness tracker. You should really write about that. We got $10 million on Kickstarter. No, that's not for me. That's not what I write about. So and I know it sounds really simple, but people get that wrong all the time. They forget to do that. Do not spray and pray. Email every writer at TechCrunch. Like our email addresses are public. We have a post that has everybody's email address. We're not hiding. But if you email one of our enterprise reporters with a fitness tracker, it's not going to happen. If you email one of our gadget writers with an enterprise security product, not going to happen. But you've got to know what you're doing. It's really straightforward. Read their stories, read their Twitter, stalk them if you have to. Somebody said stalk people, stalk them. And then contact. It really depends. Some writers do indeed want to get phone calls. Some people hate LinkedIn. Some people hate email. Some people hate everything and you just have to badger them at a conference. For us, most of us writers at TechCrunch, just email us. That's the easiest to get a hold of somebody, but with all the caveats of how do I break through that noise to begin with. Do not call. Did I mention that? Do not call. And don't pitch people at the same time. So let's talk a little bit more about that first email, because that's usually the first introduction, unless you DM somebody on Twitter, and it's still about the same. Your subject, your email subject is number one. It's the first thing you see, and most people make a split-second decision whether to open that email or not. Now, you want to offer an exclusive? That's probably the first word in your subject, exclusive. Seed round for zero trust startup. That's your calling card. You've got to get that right. Do not have an email that, I think I've got an example here somewhere. Subject, Jim of Peppermill. Well, this is a real email, just change the names. So this stuff comes in. Or here, something, company name, local weather, CEO call. No. I want to talk to your CEO and let you know what the product is about. We're not setting up calls here. We're just trying to figure out if there's something we want to set a call about. Get to the point, just right away there. So you said skip the foreplay, is that what it was? Yes. No. Pretty much in your email, that's what you do. Hi, Frederic. We just raised a seed round led by Andreessen Horowitz. Boom. Pretty much guaranteed to get coverage. Short but informative. I get a lot of emails that are 8 paragraphs of background information. I don't have time for that. Not at this stage. We're just trying to figure out if this is something we want to work together.
How much is too much?
I would say a good introductory email is really just 2 paragraphs of dense information. Maybe 3, that's it. This is not a college essay. I don't need every piece of detail about the company at this stage. Do not call it revolutionary or disruptive or any of those things, but short but informative, dense. Because as you saw that list of emails, right? The ones I open, they better be worth my time. I know it sounds really arrogant. I'm aware of that, it is. But it's the only way to get through a workday with that kind of noise.
How about an attachment with a one-pager?
That's fine.
The email short.
Sure, it's fine. Here is, if you want to read more here, I've attached our one-pager. Here's quotes of customers and all that kind of stuff. I do recommend, by the way, and I don't think it's in my presentation, to build a press kit. the full press kit for when you have an announcement. Put it on Dropbox or Google Drive or somewhere with your press release, quotes from investors, quotes from customers. Photos are really important. Images, screenshots. And I know for a lot of you that's hard. Your screenshots are not really exciting. It's not a little robot usually that drives around. You can't do a cute video with that. But just have a team picture, for example. We love team pictures. It's true. Like, look at half of it. If I don't have to go to Getty Images or Shutterfly or somewhere and find some boring stock picture to illustrate what you're doing, it makes me so much happier. It's really the small things keep me going. If we meet somewhere at an event, make sure you put that in the subject. Met at Cybertech, met at RSA, met at somewhere. That's really useful because then I suck at remembering names. I remember a lot of faces, but I suck at remembering names. And a lot of people I like, I think. So make sure you do that. And then, yes, I do not recommend another tangential answer. I do not recommend launching product news or making those announcements at those events. I recommend doing it before. Because at those events, especially if you're going, let's say you're going to an AWS reInvent or something like that, one of those big vendor conferences, those vendors have so much news that we have to focus on because our company paid us to go there and cover that event. We'll just focus on AWS news if you have, or you go to KubeCon or any of those giant shows these days. So I recommend doing it before and then go in with that news. So I think most of my colleagues that I talk to at TechCrunch and other publications are very happy to meet with you at those events and talk to you and get a sense of the ecosystem and everything else that's going on. But the news, we would love to get before. Because at the event, you don't have time. I do meetings from often at an AWS reInvent from 10 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock with maybe half-hour breaks every now and then. I didn't have time to write at the event, so your news is not going to get covered even if we talk. So, do it before. Yep. And news before, have the chat before, and then we can meet in person, have a cup of coffee, and just build that relationship. And once you've built that relationship, you don't have to worry about breaking through the noise because you've already broken through it. Embargoes. Let's just talk about embargo times for a second here, since I think somebody mentioned that. 2 a.m. Pacific time is not a good embargo time. Right? We're there to service our readers. If I write a story that goes out at 2 a.m. Pacific time, most of our readership is West Coast US or East Coast US. Kind of middle, and then England, Germany, Europe, India, right? But most of it is West Coast. I want my story to be read by as many readers as possible. And so that often means somewhere between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. Pacific time. 9 a.m. that's the traffic jam of embargoes right there. I almost would say don't do that. Pick something weird sometimes, 9:30 or 8:30 or something like that, so you do not get drowned out in the noise of all the 9 a.m. embargoes from Google and Microsoft and Amazon and everybody else. They have the same embargo. So just keep that in mind. And I know often it really depends. Maybe your audience, your product is only available in the UK or only available in Israel, and we still write about it, because why not, right? If it's an interesting product. Then yeah, sure, make it a time that works for you here. That's 8 o'clock in the morning here. We will do that. We're not going to say, oh God, we can't write about this if it's that time. But a lot of people might be a little bit more hesitant with that.
Can you give us a sense of traffic? Because we can see the spike in traffic on our own websites, but we don't really know how many people are reading, say, a funding announcement of a relatively unknown company.
Sure.
That first day, how many people are reading?
I'm not allowed to share real numbers, but if it's a story that's not doing well, it's probably still 5 figures of readers for that story. I can give you a sense that most months I have more than 1 million readers for all my stories that month. Yeah, so just to give you a sense, you can say we've got about 30 writers at TechCrunch, so you can get, extrapolate from that a little bit, how much traffic there is. But
And for your content, what does better than others?
good question. So funding stories are never the stories that are going to get the most traffic. It's just the case. For my stories, it's the ones that actually focus more on, for example, a developer audience that get on Hacker News and other places and get shared widely. Those tend to do a lot better. Obviously, something that's just consumer tech is always going to do better. It's just how the world. If you write about Facebook, you guarantee traffic. Just how it is. And this is different at different publications. We at TechCrunch do not get judged on how much traffic we bring in. That is just not what people are looking at. What's far more interesting to us is how long do people stay on the site. Are people spending a minute reading a story or 10 seconds? But we have that data, obviously, just like you have for your site. We know for every article, every writer, how long. So a funding story, I can share that. Let's say it's about 50 seconds if somebody stays on that story. It's 500 words or something. A consumer story may only be 30 seconds because the consumer just already clicked to the App Store and is downloading the app, right? So it's a very different market. And then an in-depth story, somebody might be there for 5 minutes. And a lot of the market is changing in journalism, where we have a subscription product now, for example, right? You may have seen that, TechCrunch, any subscribers. Anyway, the people who come to that site, it's long, in-depth interviews with CEOs and others, and those people read an article often for 5, 6, 7 minutes. So it's very different. But
And tablet versus a phone?
yeah, it's about 50-50. Changes on the weekend. Weekend it's more mobile, obviously, because people are at home reading, and during the week people are at their desk, at work, reading TechCrunch. Nothing wrong with that. I encourage that. So it's all right.
It works.
It totally works. It keeps me occupied and gainfully employed. What did that answer your question? I've got some examples here of bad ones. Hi, my name is X, because we protect the innocent, from Great Job PR, and I was wondering if you accept any pitches or angles for consideration for TechCrunch. What am I supposed to do with that? Right? Here is, Jim, the founder of Peppermill, who has led other companies and would like to talk to you. About 50% of emails are like that. It's pointless. You have a new product. Tell me what the new product is. I don't want to talk to Jim. I want to talk to the guy who's building this great product that I really care about, and he just got funding from, a great company in Boston, NEC or something. I think it's pretty straightforward. The way I always look at this is, as far as email etiquette goes, the way somebody, writes a signature is how you should address them. Fred is not my name. So you already lost a point there. I wanted to offer you my team. I would love you to do a feature on Rep's local weather. I would like to set up a call. Well, I know nothing about your company. I don't want to set up a call if I don't know about your company, right? So that whole, make that introduction brief, informative, give me all the information up front. And do not tell me what other companies. I will do a Google search. I will look if somebody has covered you before. So this was your question, when should I start pitching as well? It's not just 2 weeks ahead. It's 3 to 4 weeks before the event. You should start pitching for a story like 2 weeks before the event. Because it takes us some time to set up a call, find time. Maybe I'm busy, maybe somebody's on vacation. You did all this work finding the right writer, but that writer's on Hawaii. It's not going to help you. So most of us don't really take 2 weeks of vacation, but so if you at least have 2 weeks of wiggle room there, you usually find time.
I get the impression that if you're in stealth mode, you have no interest in beginning a relationship with a potential founder. Is that right?
No. But it depends on the founder.
I understand.
So if your founder is already well known, I'll write about you. If you're
So it's not about the writing, it's about developing the relationship of trust.
Yeah. And often it's So yeah, if the company is in stealth but raises money, but can at least give me a general idea what they're doing. Hey, we're still in stealth, but we're building this really cool zero trust network security thing. And we just raised $10 million from Andreessen, from NEA, Madrona, I don't know. Yeah, I'll talk to you. So we'll write about you, but usually with the, also we at that point, we'll talk about other stealth, what you expect to happen. And then the story is about the funding, but really often about the general market that you're playing in and what maybe you could be doing differently. But yeah, if you're a stealth company and just really stealth, yeah, that's why you're a stealth company. You probably don't want to get written out at that point.
No.
Yeah. That's harder. If you're stealth, it's a little bit harder.
But I think if you want to develop the relationship early on,
That's the time to do it. But it's harder because you can't talk about the product, and as I said, product. Trade-off. But there's always exceptions. There's a lot of friction. A lot of friction. So, before, I've got a little FAQ at the end here. This is not everything, but these are questions I get all the time. How much do we have to pay? And this tends to come more from the South Asia market, where there's more pay to play. I don't think that's prevalent here, definitely not in the US and Europe. But no, you do not have to pay for a story. That's pretty obvious. Can we see the post before it goes live? No, period. Can you prove, can we get a look at the quotes you're using from us? No. The meeting was on the record. It's recorded, it's transcribed. If you have complaints afterwards, sorry. You said that. Just how it worked. We should probably talk a little bit about doing those briefings as well. I don't have a slide for that, but let me do that after this. Will my post go live at the embargo time? Yes, because we've agreed on the embargo, or at least within the hour. If sometimes my copy editor is not available, and I had to write it in the morning, so maybe it goes out at 9:15 instead of 9 o'clock. Right? We do have copy editors. Do you write your own headlines? Yes, we do. Can I add you to a mailing list? No, I don't want to be on your mailing list for your customers. That's not my place to be. That's just more noise that comes up all the time for some reason. And yes, we will honor your embargo. But do not give me all the information in that first email, because until I've accepted that embargo, there is no embargo. If you tell me, hey, we just raised $10 million from Andreessen, and I should have said that before. If we just raised $10 million from Andreessen Horowitz for this product that's coming out of stealth that does X, Y, and Z, the embargo is Monday at 9 a.m. I'm not bound by that embargo. I will honor the embargo, still, but really the professional thing is to say, can we agree on an embargo to go into more depth about the story? You can give away some of it. We just raised a substantial round of money from a big investor in Silicon Valley or something like that without giving it all away. But you definitely want to figure that one out. Let's talk about that phone briefing for a second, because ideally what you want to do is set up a phone briefing with the writer. One part is having that email and introduction. Sometimes we're just so busy, we'll just do an email Q&A. Happens a lot when I'm traveling, like this week. I'm not going to set up a call with somebody on the West Coast, figure out a briefing. But most of the time you want a briefing, maybe over the Zoom call, maybe with video, maybe without, whatever you prefer. But you should come into that briefing prepared to talk about your company. You should have your elevator pitch ready. One thing I always ask is, what's the history of the company? What's the history of you? What have you done before? Why should I care about you? Now, if you're an Israeli cybersecurity company, yeah, I know you were in some army unit. Yeah, what else? But give me that background. Tell me why you're interested, because people care about who the founders are too. Like, our readers really care to know about the other founders. Who are these people? Are they like me? Are they different? And give me some background about it. Be ready for that. Be ready for questions about your product that, depending on the writer, might be really, really precise or not. It really depends on who you're talking to. Maybe they understand your market, maybe they don't. Are you ready to talk about competitors? And say, we're different from these guys in that way. A lot of companies say, oh, we don't have competitors. No, we're the only ones. Our competition is an Excel spreadsheet. The dollar for every time I hear that. Or a notebook. That's my competition to some companies. If we know there's competitors out there, you should be able, we know you should be able to talk to them. You ready to give a demo of your product, if you can? Over screen share, that's pretty easy. Yeah. Me being in Portland, I don't do a lot of in-person meetings, but a lot of people in other areas might. If you're in San Francisco, totally possible somebody wants to meet with you in person. And then always expect people to ask for context. Just what else is happening in the web. And if you don't want to answer something, you should always be perfectly straightforward and say, no, we don't share revenue numbers. I will ask you, but what's your valuation? I will ask. It's in my contract, basically. I have to ask you. You can say no, but I have to ask those questions. Like, do you have $1 billion valuation at this point? I can't talk about that yet, then it's fine. But I can say, well, they did not disclose those numbers. Maybe you get acquired. The last step in your journey sometimes, right? You get acquired. No, we're not disclosing the amount of funding, the amount of the acquisition price. We don't disclose it. Now, I'll ask maybe a VC that was in your round or somebody, and usually we can get a number, not all the time, but often we can get a number. You may not like that. It's, in that case, not my problem. But it's, say no. If you don't want to talk about something, just say no. It's fine. It's usually not a problem.
How often would you have a phone briefing and then not write a piece in the coming days after?
That's a good question. If I take a phone briefing, it's about a 99% chance I'll write. I can honestly think of very few instances that I didn't write about something. And by the time I've said I will do a briefing, and I've spent the time, the half hour on the phone and doing research before, maybe talking to some other people, I will write that story. But even it might be a short story if I'm not that convinced it's really exciting. But I don't want to waste my time either. So by the time we've agreed on the briefing, we're doing the story. But overall, phone briefings, a lot of founders really stress out about them. I think most tech journalists are really just, they're not there to mess with you. They really just want to get an interesting story out for their readers. They're not trying to, they will ask you questions you may be uncomfortable with, but they're not out to get you. We're not out to get founders. Like if we're out to get maybe the Twitter founders or Sam Altman or somebody who's really already made a name, we do not punch down. We'll punch up, but we'll not punch down. Go out, talk to people, try to set up those meetings. So just introduce yourself when you see somebody at a event, for example. I've had people walk into the press room while I'm working and try to pitch me in the press room when I have a half-hour deadline to get a story out. That's not the place to do. But if you see somebody walking around at a conference, just introduce yourself. Say, hey. For the most part, we don't go to these events to hype. Right? We're there because we want to meet startups.
I'm not a writer, but I find interesting stories and I write about them. And if I offer you a story, but I don't want my name to be published or nothing, but I just want something very interesting to be shared with the world, would you accept it?
As a full piece of writing that's anonymous?
Yes.
It would have to be very, very scoopy. It would have to be something that's really, really out there. Usually we would not do that. We do guest posts, right? We do those all the time. We do guest posts. We do take contributions from CEOs and other thought leaders, investors. But for the most part, the way to go about that would be to actually talk to a writer and says, here's an interesting angle I've discovered. Can we talk about that? And you can write that story, or we can work with you on that story. But don't do a lot of stuff that's anonymous. Just
No, I don't care about anonymous.
But if you
Not
have
the
a,
charity,
if
something
you have a
very
really interesting story that you think fits within the mold of what we do, then as long as it's under your name and our guest post editors agree that it should be on the site, we'll publish it. Now, we usually don't get paid for it, but sometimes, we've got freelancers.
So what's the pitch process for that?
The pitch process for that is either come directly to a writer you already know and say, hey, we've got this story, and I'll make that introduction, or somebody will make the introduction to Eric, who's the main guy for our, Eric Eldon, who used to actually be the editor-in-chief of TechCrunch before he left many years ago. This for us, the guy who's in charge of that. You could go directly to him. I think we have an email address now for that is pitches@techcrunch.com. I might get in trouble by sharing that, but you could try that. I think there's guest posts at TechCrunch.com. If you search guest post TechCrunch, there's an article somewhere on the site that explains the process of that, so I'm not in charge of that. So it's a good way of getting your name out. I should say those stories are usually not about your company, right? You can't use them to pitch. You just get a link to your company for some good SEO. It has to be about a subject that maybe is something you're an expert in, that maybe what your company does to some degree, but it's not about your company.
What is not related to the company?
That's fine. If it's not related, even better. If it's tangentially related, and maybe about the technology or just a trend you're seeing, how to work with a lawyer, a startup lawyer, or something like that, just something that's kind of related, that's fine. But it can't be. I had somebody who might be CTO of one of the very big cloud providers may have sent a pitch recently that was all about that big cloud. So even though it's a big name, we're probably not publishing there.
Will you cover a startup, like how often? For example, maybe there's something to say in the stealth mode, but will you cover it 3 months after when there's a product?
Yeah. It's as simple as that. Because we like to tell the story of that startup from day one until the end, whatever that end may be. That end may be shutting down. We don't do that many. We used to do more of those stories when a lot of startups were shutting down or you get acquired. Or you have an IPO and become a super billionaire. We like to cover from day one until whatever that is, because that's our bread and butter, covering those stories. There's companies today that are Google and others that we covered from the day they launched. Wow. So we want to be there for that next Airbnb. All these, all those scooter companies out here that are cluttering up there. It's like all those companies we've covered from day one. We want to keep doing that. And no, we will not cover you every week. Unless you Google or Apple. All right. Anything else? Was that too much information?
That's perfect.
That's good.
Spot on.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be around if anybody has other questions.